Hi folks, I'm joined for a special conversation with a chap called Charlie Cornish Dale. Now you probably aren't very familiar with that name if you don't read every Hope Not Hate report on the state of hate in the United Kingdom, but you may be familiar with his Twitter handle, which is Raw Egg Nationalist, or you may have read Man's World every now and again, which of course he publishes. Charlie, or I'm used to saying Ren, nice to have you here, and I thought we'd just find out what happened with Hope Not Hate.
Yeah, well, it's a pleasure. We've just recorded a show, and we touched on the docs a little bit, and it will be my honour to tell you more.
Thanks so much. So what happened exactly? 'Cause, I mean, was it just one day you woke up and Hope Not Hate have published their egg expose on you, and I assume your phone was probably blowing up from people saying, "Oh, by the way, mate, you've been doxed."
It was sort of like that. So on the show moments ago, or an hour and a half ago, I spoke about the scare that I had a couple of weeks before the docs. So I went to one of my local farm shops that I like to go to, and I went to buy some milk and some eggs, of course. And the owner of the farm shop ran over to me and shepherded me over to the desk and said, "Look at this." Puts a piece of paper in my hand. What is it? It's an email from an American journalist at Business Insider, a woman called Catherine Long. And it basically said, "I have reason to believe that this social media influential blogger, actually, I think is what she called me," which was a slight, I think, against me. But anyway, she said, "Yeah, I have reason to believe this influential blogger is shopping at your farm shop, and could you tell me his name? And I'll make sure that nobody ever knows." That's how I got it. And so that was about 2 weeks before I was actually doxed, and I considered that a lucky escape. I thought, well, okay, I've come very close to being doxed. Obviously, my OPSEC isn't good enough, but thankfully they've not found out. But anyway, 2 weeks later on a Friday morning, I'm on Twitter in the group chats, and somebody says, "Sorry, mate, about the docs." And that was the first I knew. So they obviously didn't reach out to me for comment. They just dropped it. And I just had to roll with the punches from there. So it was, I knew it was coming. Of course it was going to come. I mean, Hope Not Hate had included me in their 2023 State of Hate report in the fascist Nazi category for my advocacy of raw egg consumption and bodybuilding, which are, well known.
Possibly combined with patriotism as well.
Yeah, quite.
Average fascist.
So, yeah.
So, well, lots of questions flow from that. So, what was the first and most sort of immediate consequence of the doxing?
I actually felt relief. I did actually feel relief. It was like a great psychic burden had been lifted, one that I actually didn't know I was carrying. That's the strange thing. So it seemed to me, I suddenly realized, actually, you know what, being anonymous has actually taken a toll on me that I didn't fully understand, that I wasn't fully aware of. So I felt relief. I didn't feel scared at all. I didn't rush to my phone to send messages to people. I didn't rush to send messages to ex-girlfriends, even though I suspected it's a disgruntled ex-girlfriend, perhaps. There were fires to put out, certainly, because the Hope Not Hate docs was specifically calculated, obviously, to make me look as bad as possible. And they used a very old photograph of me, a 15-year-old photograph of me at my most scholarly, when I was about 21, when I won a national award for my undergraduate dissertation. There's a sort of grainy, 300 by 240 picture of me taken on an eye potato. So they used that, and that obviously didn't quite fit with the image of the Raw Egg Nationalist, of the raw egg slonking bodybuilder. But apart from that, it was a normal day on Twitter for the most part. I didn't respond to any negative comments. I didn't confirm the docs. I thought, look, I'll respond to it in my own time. And so I took some time. I took a day or two, and then I posted a better picture of myself, which generated a lot of discussion, which was funny. And then I posted a picture of myself in my underpants, as one as one does, just to confirm that I do in fact lift. and that I'm not a skinny nerd. So it was, yeah. I mean, it was kind of business as normal, really. It hasn't, and certainly in the longer term now, it's been a month. I haven't really experienced any negative repercussions that I can see or that I know of. I mean, I think I was right, obviously, to maintain anonymity, to maintain my OPSEC as much as possible, because clearly there are people hunting people like me, powerful people. And not everybody in my position or not every anonymous poster on Twitter or social media has the ability, I think, to absorb a doxing in the way that I have, because I work for InfoWars. I mean, I don't have a normie job. I don't have a normie life. It doesn't. I'm not going to get fired, and that is still obviously a clear and present danger for.
And that's what the purpose of these doxings is for, isn't it?
Yeah. So the purpose. I think there are different varieties of dox. So you have these sort of common garden doxings that aim to get people to lose their jobs, that aim at reputational damage and get people isolated from their friends and families and affect their livelihoods. But then you have these doxes like my doxing, and also the dox of Jonathan Keeperman, aka Lomez, the man behind Passage Press. I think those kind of doxings are quite different, because what they're trying to do is they're not trying to make the person who's being doxed look bad per se, so much as actually they're threats, basically. They're threats. And it wasn't a coincidence that the Lomez dox was written by this Antifa guy, really nasty guy, mutant, horrible looking fellow, nasty fellow called Jason Wilson, who is hand in glove with Portland, Oregon Antifa, works for Bellingcat as well, which is a citizen intelligence organization that has very close ties to Western governments and does...
Specifically intelligence agencies.
Yes, so I mean, what Bellingcat does is they do a lot of the dirty work for intelligence agencies. So, you want to get some information out there about Russia. You want to identify some, I mean, they even, I think they had Bellingcat reveal that it was Russians who shot down MH370 over Ukraine.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think they actually got Bellingcat to do that. They also got Bellingcat to reveal the Russian source or the Ukrainian source for the Steele dossier.
I was going to say I was sure they were involved with that somehow.
They were, yeah. So what they do is they get a tip off from the intelligence agencies, or they get given a packet of data.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, here are some phone records. You might want to look in these phone records. You might want to look at this flight manifest, and that's Bellingcat started out as a citizen, like I say, a sort of citizen journalist, citizen intelligence white hat operation, and they were using open source data, and they were very proud of the fact that they were using open source data. So they would say, like, this is all publicly available data that we've used to identify these awful far right people in Poland.
Yeah.
They don't do that. Well, they do some of that, but now they say, actually, we use grey data, we use black data. You can't see that data, but we can tell you what's in it, and we can identify the individuals involved. And so, I mean, I think with the Jonathan Keeperman docs, and I think there's definitely a possibility Bellingcat was involved in that. And with my docs, then there's, via Hope Not Hate, then there's definitely a suggestion of intelligence involvement. And I think there's a broader suggestion of intelligence involvement because of this letter that was sent to or email that was sent to this farm shop. It was sent by a woman called Catherine Long, who works for Business Insider. I may even post the actual email on. Yeah. I've transcribed it, and it was in my latest American Mind essay, but I may actually post an image of it so people really do know that it's real. But I've looked on her LinkedIn. I mean, she worked for the US State Department, for USAID in somewhere like Uzbekistan or Tajikistan. She's fluent in Farsi and Tajik. She went to Yale or an Ivy League school. I mean, she glows. She absolutely glows. If she isn't an intelligence contact in the world of journalism, I don't know who is.
And even if she's not, she's obviously of the stripe of person who would cooperate with them thinking they're doing the right thing anyway.
Yeah, of course.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. I mean, it's one of the things that I say in the American Mind article is that it's not far-fetched to imagine that actually the interests of radical leftist groups like Hope Not Hate could align with the interests of the government and the security services.
Clearly does.
Because they do.
Yeah.
You know, Hope Not Hate wants to bash the fash. They want to make fascists feel uncomfortable and out them, etc. And the government wants to keep a lid on right-wing populism and disrupt right-wing networks. So what do? Well, you phone up Hope Not Hate and you say, Raw Egg Nationalist is actually Charlie Cornish Dale.
Well, there's a reason that the government has been funding Hope Not Hate.
And they have.
They absolutely have, the Conservative government, incidentally. There's a reason all of this is funded and networked together. And it's no coincidence that every year it is the same slate of people who are essentially lit up by Hope Not Hate. Because I do think you're right. I think there is an underlying threat of violence in the work that they do. They are hoping that someone will try and Bolsonaro you. Remember, he got stabbed on the campaign trail by some random leftist who just happened to be mentally unsound. Lucky for him, so he avoided jail. They're hoping that something like that will happen, just to take out inconvenient right-wingers, I think.
Yeah, I absolutely wouldn't doubt that. And to go back to the Lomas docs, and I mean, Jason Wilson, he is an apologist for Antifa violence. He is an apologist for doxings, he's an apologist for beatings, and for murder, ultimately. And yes, I do think they weren't going to make me look bad, really. Not in any real sense, you know, oh, he went to Oxford and Cambridge, he's got a PhD in medieval history. I mean, you know, gosh, I was hanging my head in shame. You know, I'm successful. I've got an independent income, so they're not going to make my life economically difficult. But what they can do is they can make me think, should I leave the front door on the latch?
Yeah.
Should I purchase, you know, some sort of implement that might double as a weapon to keep next to my computer? Should I, all that kind of stuff, you know, what happens when I'm out in the garden? And
but they also want to make your life socially difficult.
Yes,
as well.
Yeah.
Has that been an issue?
So yeah, I mean, socially, I would say my life is difficult anyway. I mean, dating is very difficult. And one of the funniest things about dating in the present age is that, I mean, women really can pick up on vibes. Women really do pick up on vibes, and they know you're not a leftist. And some of them, they don't care. But a lot of them, particularly middle-class girls, they push and push and push. And, you know, they kind of... they get you to a point where you either basically have to stop seeing them or you have to tell them. In at least one instance, I was actually found out by an ex-girlfriend, and you know, it was difficult. It is difficult being of the right, of the genuine right, and you know, you find that a lot of men do cuck on the basis of their girlfriend or wife's political beliefs, because it's just easier to do that, and most men, you know, would rather have a girlfriend or a wife than not, and be right wing. So I mean, I've had to deal with difficulties in my personal life anyway over the last 4 years, as I've put on the cloak and the suit and the mask of the Raw Egg Nationalist. But so far, no, I've not had any social difficulties. Nobody I know. I mean, one person I was at Oxford with sent me a GIF of a man sniffing an egg, and I just knew. I was like, yeah, you found out, of course. And he was like, yes, I follow all sorts of handsome bodybuilders for the thirst traps, and I discovered that you're one of them. But other than that, no, nobody from my personal life has been in touch about it.
Okay.
Which is interesting, and I do wonder whether people know and they're just keeping quiet, or whether there is going to be some kind of deluge at some point of people sort of saying, "Oh yeah, I was at Oxford with him, I was at Cambridge with him, and I know something about him." I don't know what that will be, but
So, what sort of thing are you expecting to come of this in the future?
I don't know. I really don't know what to expect. I mean, it was interesting. For the last 4 years, I've tried to avoid being doxed, and I've told other people to avoid being doxed, and I'm pretty sanguine about it, but it's a dangerous time. And if you look at somebody like Ricky Vaughan, what's happening to Ricky Vaughan? Ricky Vaughan was an anonymous poster. He posted some funny memes he didn't even make on Twitter, and he's been arrested and convicted under a Reconstruction era voter suppression statute with election interference, and he could go to prison for, I think 7 or 10 months.
I thought it was years.
Initially it was suggested, I think, that it was going to be something like 10 years, but they got it down to, it's about a year. Right. But even so, it's not going to be nice.
What he had done is posted a meme advertising, I think it was black women should vote on the wrong day, or via text message.
Via text message, yeah.
Yeah. This is not true information, obviously, but Ricky Vaughan was an anonymous poster on Twitter and not some sort of official involved in the electoral process. So it seems deeply inappropriate to apply that kind of legislation against him.
And they showed as well during the trial they couldn't show rather during the trial whether anybody had not been able to vote in the correct manner because they'd seen the meme. So they couldn't even show that any votes had been suppressed.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, it was a partisan prosecution in New York, of all places, with a political appointee judge, and so he was convicted. He's appealing it at the moment, but that's an example to warn other people. Basically,
it's a clear example to me of lawfare against a private citizen by the state for partisan ends, and so this is why a lot of people ask me, "Well, are you worried about a Labour government?" And I have to say, well, yes, obviously, I'm worried about a Labour government, and this is why I do my best to keep my my nose relatively clean of drama and incidents, which is possible, by the way. If you are a right-winger online, you're an intellectual and you want to speak about particular topics, you just have to speak in a way that doesn't trigger certain tripwires. That's all you have to do.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting, when I went on Tucker Carlson, so I was in The End of Men, the Tucker Carlson documentary, and then I actually went on his show to talk about it for 5 minutes, which was surreal. I suddenly had people turning... So I had a Telegram group chat, which actually I ended up closing down. I suddenly had an influx of people coming in saying, you need to talk about this particular topic now. It's a shame you didn't use your platform on Tucker Carlson to talk about this particular topic, this particular group of people. And I was just like, what are you trying... Do you think I'm that stupid, for a start, even if I wanted to talk about it? Do you think I'd be that stupid to do it in that manner? Yes, it's totally possible for you to keep your nose clean, and I haven't done anything illegal. No, I haven't encouraged people to do anything outside the boundaries of the law. I simply hold opinions that are
not progressive
and unfashionable, although they're becoming less unfashionable.
Yeah, I don't even agree that they're unfashionable, actually. I think they might be forbidden.
Yes,
but
that's a better way to put it.
Not uncool, actually.
No.
So just a quick thing. I wanted to go back to anonymity, because I find this really interesting, because I was anonymous for probably about a year or two at the beginning of my career, but I let go of it very quickly because at the time I was a liberal, and so I wasn't worried about falling outside of the sort of acceptable paradigm of thought. I've obviously developed my political ideas quite significantly from that position, and so I've had to do them with my face and name attached to them, which hasn't always been the easiest thing to go through. But tell me more about the sort of fear and the reason that you were anonymous to start with.
I started posting. It was happenstance, really. So the funny thing is actually, so my handle, babygravy9, came from being asked to do some Twitter research on an anthropologist called David Graeber. Right. So I was asked to do, for Quillette, of all publications, actually for Claire Lehman, and for a piece that she was writing about this chap, David Graeber, who was trying to get one of his colleagues Me Too'd to wrest control of an academic journal from him. Anyway, so Baby Gravy came from David Graeber's name because I knew an Australian woman who said David Graeber's name as Baby Gravy.
Right.
So that's where it came from. So I was just on Twitter following Bronze Age Pervert and other funny accounts and retweeting stuff. Didn't think very much of it. I mean, my first account, or first iteration of the account, was called Turning Point Chatal Hoyuk. Yeah, about...
That's a very niche meme.
Yeah, about the agricultural revolution and its consequences being a disaster for the human race. And so I only really started posting as the Raw Egg Nationalist. I didn't think I would do anything. I didn't think it would go anywhere. And I'm still kind of surprised that it did.
There's a reason that my Twitter handle is Sargonavacad.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was going anywhere.
Yeah.
You know.
So I'm lumped with this strange handle, which has kind of become, famous in its own right. So I'm not going to do anything with it. But yeah, I didn't have a plan when I started out anonymously. It really started to gain momentum after I wrote my cookbook, the Raw Egg Cookbook, in August of 2020. And then by the time the Tucker Carlson documentary rolled around in 2022, that's when things really started to go crazy. So, I just assumed that, look, I was going to have to remain anonymous because I would suffer terrible consequences in my personal life. I did have a normie job at one point, in the pandemic, through the beginning of the pandemic, but I've moved away from that now. So I thought it would be devastating. I thought it would be devastating to lose. And I thought that the police would knock on my door, potentially. Not that I've done anything wrong, but you're encouraged to feel that way, I think, because it does happen.
Well, we live under a politicized regime.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's the issue.
Yeah, we do.
And you're on the wrong side of it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, even a Conservative government, the Conservatives really, it was very interesting, for example, with the George Galloway stuff, with the challenge from George Galloway, that they used the rising Islamic vote, the power of the rising sort of Islamic demographic. Rishi Sunak holds a press conference and all he talks about is the far right.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's mad. But that is the Conservatives actually, in many respects, I think, were even more fearful of the real right than the left, because
they're actually vulnerable to them.
They are, exactly. And look what happened in the election. Reform, whatever happens with reform, people were voting for reform not just as a protest vote, but also because reform represented a genuine alternative that might do something about immigration.
Hasn't panned out brilliantly.
Well, quite. But so the real right was a genuine threat to the Conservative Party. So they were right to identify that and to do something about it, I suppose, in the interest of self-preservation. But it's an interesting situation, and I don't know whether I am going to get in trouble. I have a high enough profile, and I have some pretty powerful contacts, and I know powerful people. And
just a quick thing as well. You're not from the right class to fall under that kind of purview either.
Yeah.
Because I've noticed that the police forces are very politicized with DEI, LGBT, wokeness, and all this sort of stuff. But they only tend, if you look at the people who are actually, you get the TikTok video of some lady or some man who's posted something transphobic or something like that.
Yeah.
They always have working class accents. People with an accent like mine and going up to sort of an accent like yours. I've had no problem with the police.
Yeah.
I doubt you'll have a problem with the police.
Yeah.
Because I think the people involved are from the sort of higher end of the working class and have the Marxist critique of the police is not entirely wrong when it comes to keeping down the working classes.
Yeah, and I think I'm not involved explicitly or even tacitly in organisation. Sure. I'm not organising marches. I'm not organising protests or anything like that. I'm just a right-wing person writing essays and books and making podcast appearances and all that kind of stuff. But nevertheless, the fear is there, and we will see. It's not the best thing to have a Labour government, but
no. Honestly, they've in some respects been better than the Tories already.
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
But anyway, I guess to finish up then, do you have any advice to any right-wing anonymous internet posters who may end up in the sights of Hope Not Hate or someone like them in the future?
I'd have a couple of different pieces of information. The first thing is, just don't post any personal information. Don't even post photos of foodstuffs, because that's one of the ways that I was, well, that's one of the things that this woman, Catherine Long at Business Insider, picked up on, was a picture of a raw milk carton, sorry.
I was going to say they didn't they didn't map out egg consumption by county.
Yeah.
And notice there's a remarkable egg consumption.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they could have done that and caught me red-handed. But yeah, just don't post any pictures. And in fact, what I would say is, if you want to remain anonymous, a good strategy might be to seed false information on the internet, on your account. So, you know, here's my morning view, and you post a picture of the Lake District and you live in Cornwall. You know, some simple things like that aren't obtrusive, that just fit in with the rest of your posting. Maybe some fake information about a job you did. You know, I remember what it was like in the forces, and you went in the forces, all that kind of stuff. You can do that sort of thing. But yes, I mean, primarily you want to avoid posting any personal information, including in group chats as well, because group chats get leaked. Yeah. And there's been this absurd, persistent rumor that I'm a Libyan Jew, because I was talking in a group chat. We were talking about Gaddafi, actually, in a group chat, you know, because people often post memes about Gaddafi, you know, and there's inviting 50 Italian models to his palace and then giving them all copies of the Quran and all that sort of stuff.
I thought it was 500.
It might have been 500, yeah. It was a lot. It was a lot of Italian models.
Shockingly based to give them an hour-long lecture on the Quran, to be honest.
But so I said, look, my mother was raised in Libya because my grandfather was in the RAF. And he was posted there. She was born in Singapore, but when he was posted there, but there was a selected section of what I had said was then posted on people's timelines, and then that became that my family was expelled from Libya by Gaddafi in 1970 when he expelled the Jews, and you know, so don't think there is no private on social media, and that includes private messages. So don't make that mistake. Just
as a quick thing, I'd really like to bolster that point by just saying anything you put on the internet, you should consider public knowledge.
Yes, quite.
You're exactly right. Any private conversation, no matter how much you trust the person, it doesn't even matter if they don't leak it. You're putting it on an enemy's platform.
And it's also true about Twitter. I don't know whether it's still true now, but there were insiders at Twitter who were
looking at messages.
And giving them to people like, there's a chap called Travis Brown who works in Germany.
Right.
And he has been given money by the German government to map networks of right-wingers in Europe and America. And he is constantly archiving stuff, and Hope Not Hate use his archives. I know they do. Because, I mean, Hope Not Hate in their State of Hate report, then they had a picture that I posted very briefly in 2020 and deleted. That was like a physique picture, and I blocked out my face, but I thought, actually, no, I should take this down. So I took it down. So he got a snapshot of that when I posted that, and then that ended up 2 years later or 3 years later in the State of Hate report. Right. So, you know, just none of that.
Nothing is private, even if it appears to be.
The other thing I think I would say is that if you do get doxed, I think you have to realise that people like Hope Not Hate can't be bargained with or reasoned with.
Yes,
they're like the Terminator in that regard.
Absolutely are. Yeah.
You know, like don't send the messages saying you're ruining my life. Why are you doing this? I think
have some dignity.
I think you absolutely do have to stand by what you've done and who you are. Otherwise, you're providing them with a victory. I mean, I think they wanted me to deactivate my account and all that sort of stuff. I'm just not going to do that. I mean, I stand behind everything I've said. I stand behind everything I've done. I stand behind who I am, the persona and me as an actual person. So, have some dignity. Accept that these people are your enemy. That they are doing this as a way potentially to hurt you and your family.
And just a quick thing there, it's not just Hope Not Hate, it's the journalists who will use their reporting. They will message you as if they are your friends. They will send you friendly messages to say, oh, hello, I'm just doing a piece. Could you don't give them anything. No. This is a deception. This is a cover. They are trying, as you say, to ruin your life and to ultimately make you delete your own accounts from the internet and withdraw entirely.
Yeah, and there was, I mean, on the subject of journalists laundering these doxes, then There was a piece in The Independent about J.D. Vance and the fact that he follows me and BAP and other people. And within the first paragraph, then they had referenced the Hope Not Hate docs of me. They hadn't sort of couched it as being, oh, this is who Raw Egg Nationalist is. They just wrote the words far right bodybuilders and then linked it there. So what they do is these journalists, they build up almost like a network of citations.
Yes,
that's what they do. They launder this material that's possibly obtained in an illegal manner or certainly in contact with government authorities, and they make it respectable. They cite it, and then someone else cites it, and then it's been established as a credible source. This is Raw Egg Nationalist. This is
what's
who he
interesting?
is.
Edmund Burke, in his reflections on the revolution in France, pointed out that in his day, the liberals would create this, I can't remember exactly the term he used, some sort of litany of crimes or a litany of history that was exactly the same. These are the things that have been done that are anti-leftist or unacceptable to the leftists. And they'll parade those around as if you're supposed to give them any credence.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Hope Not Hate expose, I mean, it's pretty risible, the charges. It's just, he's right-wing. I mean, at one point they basically said he doesn't, he uses irony and he doesn't actually say what he believes, but we know what he believes, which is, of course, I'm some sort of Hitlerian figure. And that's what they do, but they use these buzzwords, they make associations with people like Bronze Age pervert and the broader sort of far-right ecosystem that's such a danger. And what they want to do as well is they want to suggest that there are going to be real-world consequences. So there was this absurd piece that was published I think it was almost 2 years ago now, actually, by the Global Network on Extremism and Technology, which is a Meta-funded think tank. And they do all this really spurious research on the online right. And they did a piece called The Emerging Raw Food Movement and the Great Reset. And it was basically about me and about Bronze Age pervert and some other people, Mike Marr, about how advocating consumption of raw milk and raw eggs and a return to ancestral diets is far-right extremism. But at the end, the kicker was in the final paragraph. They say, this has the potential to spill over from the internet into acts of real-world violence, like the Unabomber, basically.
So what violence are we talking about?
And I've written a raw egg cookbook where I show you how to make no-churn ice cream.
Acts of real-world culinary expertise.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what they do, because they have these words, these very particular phrases, and these very particular plays that they make time and again, and they work. And
they're certainly good at making the sort of liberal elite flighty.
Yeah,
that's what they're
absolutely, absolutely. And so, I mean, I went on Eric Metaxas's show, and we got on really well, and we talked about a piece that I had written for the Claremont Institute about George Floyd, about Derek Chauvin, because Derek Chauvin had launched an appeal at the Supreme Court. This must have been a year and a half ago at least. And I said, actually, the Chauvin case deserves to be heard on its merits in the Supreme Court, and that could be the beginning of a kind of landslide movement against the sort of racial revolution that's taking place in the US. And we got on really well, and we talked. And then I think he was told by someone, oh, have you seen this piece about Raw Egg Nationalist? He's an extremist. He's a dangerous person. And it was might have been that Global Network on Extremism and Technology piece. But he's like, the podcast comes down. It's all gone, and that is exactly what it does. They try to cut you off from respectable society and from normal people, and isolate you, and also alert the authorities to your existence if they're not aware of your existence already.
The same thing happened with me and Joe Rogan. When Joe Rogan went over to Spotify, almost all of his podcasts went across with him, apart from a select few, and mine was one that didn't. And of course, Joe won't have me on again because he's just been made, okay, there's something dangerous in this area. I can't go over there. And I mean, I don't blame them for doing that. It's sensible for their own careers and whatnot. But it's something to be aware of. So anyway, any final thoughts on your doxing just before we end?
It's been jolly good fun, actually.
Good.
It's been great to come here, certainly, and speak in the flesh. And I hope to do it again.
Because I tell you, you are right. There is something liberating about it. once you realise, actually, I'm off the edge of the cliff, but I can fly,
Yeah,
suddenly, the sky's the limit, as it were. But Charlie, thank you so much for coming
it was
in.
a pleasure. Thank
And
you.
I'm sure we'll see you again.
I hope so.